Well, neocons in Washington are absolutely giddy that Cuba might be on the brink of collapse now that they have essentially put a blockade on almost all of Venezuela's oil. Watch this.
Howard, you've seen it. That Cuba is ready to fall. You know, yeah. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about it.
Can we just watch this again? Lindsey Graham's reaction is unbelievable. I mean, him to say, yes, and giving a thumbs up, Cuba's going to fall. All of these people are going to starve. It's going to be chaotic. People are going to die. It's going to be amazing, says Lindsey Graham.
Howard, you've seen it. That Cuba is ready to fall. You know, yeah. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about it.
I'm just so disgusted, but not surprised by Lindsey Graham. And even more disgusted and unfortunately no longer surprised that Trump surrounds himself with Lindsey Graham. These are the types of people Americans did not want him to be surrounding himself with. These are the swamp creatures. Lindsey Graham is, look at the guy, like a literal swamp creature. And here they are now cheering on the fact that Cuba, the island nation just miles off the coast of Florida, may be collapsing soon. What do they mean by that exactly? Many reports are coming out that Cuba is likely on the brink. And the reason is they're experiencing blackouts for about 18 hours a day of no electricity at this point, ever since the blockade of the oil. They were receiving most of their oil from Venezuela. This is why there were 30 some odd guards surrounding Maduro, protecting him from Cuba. They were Cuban special forces units that were protecting Maduro, because for Cuba, for Maduro to no longer be in power in Venezuela is a major problem for them. They understand that the fall of the Venezuelan regime could very well likely lead to a real serious catastrophe in Cuba, and they're not wrong on that. Now, will the economy completely collapse just because of the oil blockade? Probably not. They are still getting some oil from Mexico. These people are resilient. They have proven that they can survive. The Cuban people are notoriously very happy, very poor, but very happy. Also very educated. They have an army of doctors that they send all around the world to help in various different catastrophes. They're a highly literate population. Most of them can read, but they are poor, but they're happy. And here's Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham basically celebrating the fact that they might end up collapsing soon. But the question is, what does that mean? And what is the United States preparing to do about it? Right now, they are under the leader, Miguel Diaz-Canel. He is the head of the Communist Party of Cuba. He is the first president of Cuba since 2019 who does not bear the Castro name. The Castros are not in power, but the Communist Party is still in power in Cuba. And that is something the United States government does not like. They said for a long time that when Fidel Castro's out of there, when Fidel Castro's gone, then, we'll normalize relations with Cuba. Well, Fidel died and in 2011, and we did not normalize relations with Cuba. Instead, his brother, Raul Castro, took over from 2011 until 2019. And then he, and now we've got Miguel Diaz-Canel in there. And we still have not normalized relations with Cuba. Instead, I don't know what the plan is from the United States government with Cuba, but Cuba is right off the coast of Florida, which means if Cuba collapses and if there is a serious humanitarian crisis, these Cubans will swim to Florida. And we will end up with a migration crisis, the very migration crisis that, Americans didn't vote for. Americans instead are trying to actually stop the migration crisis, but that would end up happening right off the coast of Florida if Cuba does collapse. So what is the United States government's actual thinking when it comes to Cuba? What are they preparing to do? Are they going to, my guess would be to stick Marco Rubio in there and his family and put them in power and name him Czar of Cuba. So as long as he keeps good relations with the United States, he could go and become the Czar of Cuba, run the place the way he's always wanted. and siphon resources and take all that, suck all the happiness away from all the Cuban people. I'm not really sure. Cuba used to, at one point prior to U.S. sanctions, prior to Fidel Castro coming in, Cuba had a lot of really good relations with the United States, was thriving, but there was a lot of disparity and a lot of really poor people, and so people rose up. There was a revolution, and Fidel Castro came into power. The country has suffered mostly because of U.S. sanctions against the country, but now, without the support of Venezuela, it's really unclear the future of Cuba. So we will wait and see, but I'm very curious what the United States government's plan is for Cuba. It cannot reel into disarray. If it does, it will be on our shores immediately, very, very quickly. People from Cuba will be flooding into Florida. Florida, Trump's home state, won't be Florida anymore. There are parts of Florida. It is the most bizarre thing I have ever witnessed in my life here in the United States. And I have lived in Los Angeles for over a decade, and I come from a family of refugees on top of that, whose first language is not English, and yet Florida is the only place in America where people only speak Spanish, and they look at you like you're an outsider if you try to speak to them in English. They look at you like you're insane. Something's wrong with you if you actually speak to them in English. They speak Spanish and only Spanish. Now, there are parts of California where majority of the people speak Spanish, and that's their main language. But they, of course, realize they're in America. And if you speak to them in English, they expect that, actually. They don't treat you like you're the foreigner. But places in Florida, in Miami, it is the most bizarre experience I've ever had in my life, traveling everywhere, living everywhere in the United States. Extremely bizarre. And we're going to see that quadrupled if Cuba falls and all of these Cubans flood into the United States. They have no incentive to learn English there. It's not expected. In fact, it's almost rejected. So what is the plan, guys? This is not make America great again. This whole, what is the plan here? So you're finally going to satisfy the wild, wet dreams of the Zionists taking over all of the countries they've asked us to take over now, targeting Iran, which I'm sure will be done at some point before the end of the Trump administration, because that's what they paid him for. And also the wild dreams of all the Cuban Americans who've also been very much in control of our government for a long time, for a variety of very similar reasons. I believe the Zionists learned all of the tricks from the Cuban Americans. They figured out, oh, so if you just control the politicians, you get what you want. Okay, well, then how do we control the politicians? Oh, okay, great. Thanks for that. We'll get to that. And now we have a president who's finally doing all of the neocon bidding of all the biggest neocons that have ever infiltrated our government. All of their wildest dreams are now coming true, especially Lindsey Graham. Can we just watch that one more time? I mean, just ridiculous.
Howard, you've seen it. That Cuba is ready to fall. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out. But Cuba now has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about it. Howard, you've seen it.
And also a lot of, and Lindsey Graham, who's going to be extremely happy about this. Unbelievable. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern,